I don't know. I mean, they're the imperialists.
Sure that people understand the causality between appearance. Now, before we dive into the work here, I do want to ask something that I sometimes ask, sometimes I forget it, but I think it's really important. People know that I'm working on a documentary about virtual worlds and the pandemic. And a lot of creative people are in this film, and people who wouldn't call themselves artists. They're just quote unquote regular folks. And I'm sort of knee deep in editing this interview footage, where I ask how does the COVID situation affect their creative um, workflow, or their overall engaging with creative pursuits. And I want to make the round. So let's just start with Derek briefly. How would you characterize what the COVID situation has done to you? Is it paralyzing? And some people have said here that came on the program, it's actually sort of invigorating because I do have more time, and other people say, yeah, I have more time, but I also have uh, more anxiety, so the time is really useless. How is that for you?
Uh, Interesting question. COVID starting coincided with me going back to work full time after having been a full time writer for about 4.5 years. So I don't know whether it was work that was mostly getting in the way, but for me, it's all about finding the time to balance work and family and creative pursuits. And so what I would tend to do is try and get up really early in the morning and write that way. And, just accept that I could do a little bit each day, small goals, and eventually those small goals get you to the win.
Premee, how about you?
Yeah, I was allowed to work from home, so at first I was like, well, I've got all this free time now that I had been using on my commute, so I should be able to lots more. But yeah, kind of like you mentioned, I had more time, but I also had a lot of anxiety, and I was having like memory problems, and I couldn't
Mhm.
concentrate and I couldn't focus. And for a couple of months, I was like, oh my god, I'm never going to write again, which was not really ideal because right at the start of the pandemic, like I had a novel due. So
Mhm.
I knew I had to finish that and hand it in, and I did it. And then I got it back for edits, and I was like, I do not remember writing this at all.
Wow.
So unfortunately, that kind of hasn't gotten any better. I'm still writing, but it's harder. It feels harder.
It feels harder. And when you mean you don't remember writing this, did people at least tell you that it was pretty good what you wrote, or people said it was
Yeah,
shit?
no, it's been getting good reviews. That was the second book in the Beneath the Rising trilogy, A Broken Darkness.
Hmm.
So
And Wayne, for you?
For me, I guess the COVID-19 experience has primarily been comfortable guilt. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
Ah.
Because prior to the pandemic, I was already working at home as a full-time freelance writer, and my partner was also working at home as a full-time freelance illustrator. So when coronavirus hit, the only major disruption to our lives was, well, we can't eat at restaurants anymore and our friends can't come over for a visit. But otherwise, our lives weren't actually hugely impacted in any way. So I kind of just sat there looking at the news and writing my things and going, it's like, wow, everybody else is having a really hard time now, and I'm not, and I'm feeling kind of bad about that.
Mhm. But that's
So,
interesting. But
yeah,
you also had practice being in the same space together, because one thing that I heard over and over again is
yes,
when one
exactly, yes,
person was used to working at home, that made that their space, and the other person
yeah.
then all of a sudden intruded on that space.
Yeah, so for us, that wasn't an issue because we'd already been doing that versus the horror stories we were hearing of people that had to live together and work together at home all the time, and
Yeah.
their relationship wasn't used to that dynamic and it was suffering. And for us, we were like, no, we're okay. Sorry about that, but we're doing all right. Sorry, so sorry.
You have to apologize if you're doing okay.
I'm Canadian, so it's
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of just genetic.
Oh, actually, then let me ask this question before we go to the synopsis and a little bit into the work. What is up with the Canadians, you think? That's a great broad question. What's happening with these Canadians? No, I mean there's a lot of creativity in the speculative fiction space. I mean, we had Peter Watson, and he became a good friend, and I mean he's phenomenal. There's so many others. Some left your country. Cory Doctorow comes to mind. But is there anything special about Canada when it comes to speculative fiction? Is there the fertile ground? What's in the water? Siri says there are long winters.
Yeah, boredom and isolation in the snow would probably be a big one.
I think talking with a lot of friends who are south of the border of us, one of the big differences is we just have healthcare, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing,
Yep.
you have healthcare. And so many American friends of mine just can't even consider being full-time writers because they then get disconnected from their healthcare that's related to their jobs. So I don't know if that's a factor for us, but I think it's not an obstacle for us in some sense.
This is a really good point. Now, I would like to claim that the reason why I asked this question, that I knew the answer, and I knew Derek was going to answer it this way, but I'm not a quantum person. But that's a significant thing. Premee, would you agree, or is there another secret element? I mean, this is also something that in Germany, I think, has been pointed out. A lot of American friends who live in Germany have said the same thing. That kind of security that comes with um, healthcare and other sort of basic needs met, you really have energy to write and not constantly worry about your livelihood.
I think so. I mean, there is a sense that, yeah, if you quit your job here to go write, at least you will have healthcare. But I actually would not consider quitting my job to go write because our universal healthcare does not cover vision, dental, mental health care, or medications. And
Hmm.
I need all of those things, and I get those through my job. So it's kind of it's not perfect universal healthcare the way I think Americans believe it is, and it does keep some of us kind of tied to full time employment.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is something in the water. Maybe it's something in bagged milk.
This is there's a back milk thing going on that
Yeah,
I heard. What
I
is this
was
back
wondering
milk
who
thing?
was going to be the first one to invoke the bagged milk, and it
Thought
was
we're talking
Premee.
about
So.
art here, not bagged milk. What is this with this bagged
No,
milk?
see, when you're talking
It's
about
art.
Canada, bagged milk always comes into it.
I have no
Always.
idea what that is. Explain, please.
You don't have it
You
out here.
guys
I'm gonna let
started
one of
it.
these guys explain.
Uh,
So that's milk in plastic bags.
yes, it is milk in plastic bags.
What's
It's
the
the most
A
advantage?
sack.
logical way to carry milk, and it's the most eco-friendly way to carry milk. No big containers, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
You're not worried about it like puncturing in your car trunk or like on the walk home or something? I don't know.
No, we don't run by porcupines or needles or.
No, out west, we get our milk in jugs or in boxes. Sorry, we don't have the bags out here.
It it was still delivered to the door in bags, at least back when I was a kid still living in Edmonton, because I do remember that. And it would be frozen because it was like left sitting outside on the doorstop for so long.
But it is
Nice and
still
cold.
available. But it is so is it like a nostalgic thing that people still buy it?
No, it's the only, like, in my grocery store, it's principally if you want 4 liters of milk, you can get it in 3 bags, or if you want 2 liters of milk, you can get it in a carton.
The Americans in the audience, what's a liter? Okay, so let's talk about something that we can all agree upon. What is a novella? How is a novella defined? Quickly, briefly. Is there like
Uh,
a limit? Rebellion
uh,
Publishing calls you, can you write a novella? And then you go, what is a novella? And they say, well, it caps at 98 pages.
it's the way the Hugos and the Sifwa nebulas define it is from 17,500 words to about 40,000 words, and also not considering itself a novel.
Mm-hmm.
So anything above 40,000 words is generally called a novel. Anything below 17.5 is generally called a novelette or a short story.
If it's not considered a novel by yourself, so you could you can classify this as a novel if you wanted to.
You could. And so, for example, there are some stories in Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars series, for example, that are only 32,000 or 35,000 words, but they're marketed as full novels. And so they're considered novels for that purpose.
Mm-hmm. All right.
See, you thought that was going to be interesting, but it's actually really not as interesting as the milk bag conversation.
Yeah, and actually Jerry is jumping on it. He says, "Can you get a novella in a bag or a glass pint bottle?" Now, no, I do find it interesting, but I think it's more like maybe a marketing thing. I mean, I saw this thing with what's his name? What's the guy's name whose books are sold at the airport? I don't mean Stephen King. I mean the other guy.
Oh,
An airport guy. Patterson, maybe? Something
James
like that.
Patterson, yeah.
James Patterson, and he had a piece on CBS Morning Show. Not that I watch it, but on YouTube it was served up to me. It was a 6-minute piece, and I think I told this story before. He has like a shrine to himself. He has like a little cathedral with all his books displayed all around. I'm assuming you guys have that too. So he walks in there every morning and he looks at all his books and he feels good about himself. And he showed the interviewer that he has these projects, like he's working on something like 20 or 30 books at the same time at all times. And they're all scheduled. And he was talking about these short books that people can read on the subway, basically. And they timed it exactly so that people can pick it up and they're done on their commute to work and then on the way back. I found it a little depressing, the kind of machinery that he sort of was very proud of. I mean, I can appreciate process and stuff like that, but I don't know. Since we're on that subject, what do you guys think about a guy like that, or that kind of approach to churning out content? A word that I despise.
Who do you want to start?
Premee. Always want the woman with the tentacles to start.
Yeah, I do not like the word content either, but I don't know. I like novellas, and I don't think it's just a marketing thing, and I don't think it's just a too short story, too long short story, or a too short novel. Like, I've had 3 novellas come out this year, and I've very carefully plotted and planned each of them to be exactly the length that they were, because sometimes there's, the idea of either the message you want to convey or the period during the characters' lives that doesn't fit well in the novel structure, and you also want to have more scope than a short story. So I think it's a really good length if it's done, deliberately and carefully, and if it's edited well.
And I hope I'm not misunderstood here. I'm dissing James Patterson particularly. So it's
Yeah, go
like
ahead.
it's not against the form or the format. And in particular, the 3 novellas for this show, they are all absolutely superb, and they're so different. So we're going to start talking about the work now. So I want to make this clear. I'm not against any particular form, but I am against having a shrine, a cathedral of your own books at home. And yeah.
I don't know. Writers usually have trouble with self-esteem. Maybe we should all build a shrine and worship ourselves at it every morning, and that would be good for us.
I met writer. Yeah,
I
Brain?
can't do that. That would take too much time away from me playing video games, so that's a deal breaker for me.
I don't have enough books to build a shrine. I can build like a mini shrine, a nano shrine.
Yeah.
Should I put a shrine for myself up, or should I play video games? Shrine, video games, shrine, video games. I
I
don't know.
really don't have to think about that one too hard, to be perfectly honest. So,
Oh my God, this is hilarious. Now, you guys are here to discuss these new novellas, and they're here on the table, also with the other books, but they're here on the table actually in the electronic form in the pocket books. Premee with these lifeless things, Wayne Santos with the difficult loves of Maria Makilling, and Derek with pollen from a future harvest. And let's do this. Let's do a quick synopsis, each of you. What are the books about in your own words? Spoiler alert: Derek is the only one who wrote fan fiction based on his own books, and it's awesome. Premee, you start. What is your book about?
These Lifeless Things, yeah, came out in February, and it's a story about an invasion by goodness only knows what. I guess you could call them extra dimensional beings, in creating kind of a siege city somewhere in Europe, and it's told in kind of two interwoven narratives. So that's one narrative, and then the second narrative is about 50 years later with a researcher who's studying what happened at that time, because wow, no real easy answers there, not a lot of evidence, no witnesses, and hard to figure out what's going on.
Premee, I love this book so much, and I have to tell you, and this is I did not understand what was happening, and it doesn't matter. No.
Oops.
Honestly, if you knew me, and I say something like this is a total winner for me. This doesn't mean I am disappointed. This is the highest praise, that it's,
Yay.
in my mind, so open to interpretation. It's so well written, and you're constantly trying to figure out what is the relationships between these two timelines, and you don't wrap it up neatly, which to me is something that I frankly despise. But it depends on your own preferences. But is that something that you were, or anybody was worried about? I'm always
Me.
wondering, I'm just a reader, like, but if you worried about, or your editor or the publisher, like, you know what, you can't do this. You gotta tag something on that clarifies stuff.
I have had some feedback from people saying that they weren't happy with the ending, which, again, as an author, is kind of not really my problem. But my editor never said anything about it, and I kind of do appreciate that they didn't want to, change the ending of it in any way, because I did write the entire thing to be pretty ambiguous. I'm not interested in
Yeah.
clear answers for this book.
Absolutely awesome, and absolutely the right way to approach it. By the way, speaking of extra dimensional beings, I just want to mention we're sponsored today by Bespoke Caravan, and they have a whole bunch of new creatures out. And if the camera could briefly cam over these two guys, one by the name, they're in the audience, they're standing sort of on the side, just another old one, and the other guy's name is I'm with the other great old one. So these are new avatars made by our sponsor, Bespoke Caravan. They also made some weird bug-like creatures, but I just didn't have time to dress them up. Yeah, thank you, Bespoke. This is just absolutely fantastic work. They also made Ellen Datlow's avatar for a couple 2 weeks from now. Now, Wayne, how would you describe your book?
Probably the shortest way to sum it up is Filipino mountain goddess living in modern day Toronto suffers from massive toxic masculinity relationship problems.
I
Okay,
thought you're
that's about
gonna
it.
say, okay. So last time you were on and you teased it already, you said she's using Western Union to send herself as remittance back to the Philippines, which was also pretty damn
That's
cool.
right. Yes, I actually did read that segment out earlier. Yeah, so now the wheel has come full circle, my friend.
Absolutely. And I learned a lot. I mean, I was reading in preparation, I was reading about Filipino mythical creatures, also about the Three Suitors. So this is one of those, that's part of the myth of Maria Makilling, that she had these three suitors. That's the type of myth, like two more affluent people that are courting her, and then a farmer.
Yeah, that's one of the versions. Yeah, I mean, it's as with any folklore, there's like lots of different ways the story goes, and I picked that particular one because it seemed the most interesting to me to jump into and mess around with and have all kinds of horrible things happen.
Now, Wayne, you're a very good salesman for your own stuff, but let me give you some advice. If you want to get to the James Patterson level, you should have said that Margaret Atwood is in your story as well.
Yeah, except that there's like something happening with Margaret Atwood right now, so I'm starting
Right.
to
So
wonder
she's
whether that
halfway
was even a
canceled.
good
You were
idea.
like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm like, okay, so did I just crucify myself with this? Was that just like a spectacularly bad amount of like, critically error foresight? Maybe. I guess we'll just see how it plays out.
well, if
So,
I were the publisher, I
uh,
would now release a new issue with like Margaret Atwood removed from it,
yeah.
and then make double the money. Um, Derek, how about you? I mentioned fan fiction. I mean, you're the only one with this novella plays in the world of the quantum people, the quantum evolution world.
Yeah. So Pollen from a Future Harvest is a time travel murder mystery, basically. I had written it in 2014, far before I did my
Ah,
quantum series, and it came out of I had read a whole anthology of time travel stories that I found very dissatisfying, because I felt they weren't doing time travel very well, and so I set out to do a time travel story where biology is taking advantage of traveling into the future, and then a story about time travel taking advantage of moving into the past. And so the aliens in here are around sort of a time portal that goes back 11 years in time, and that's all it does. And so they send back their pollen into the past, and that does a different kind of evolution because you're literally sending back genes of things that did succeed. So it's natural selection on steroids. But the story is about a group of humans who arrive, and there's a bit of a rebellion story going on, and then there's a murder, and the spouse of the murdered person is investigating it. And as you said, later on, I use this. The Quantum Magician happens 40 years after the events in Fallen from a Future Harvest.
hmm
And then in the second book, Quantum Garden, you do a Back to the Future time travel into the events of the Pollen from a Future Harvest as well. So I had a lot of
wow.
fun making those three works go together.
Now this is amazing. So this is a lot earlier, the novella a lot earlier than the Quantum Magician and Garden. And we talked about it last time. I mean, I think this is just so amazing. The civilization of these intelligent um, vegetables, plants that pollinate themselves by sending their seeds through the time portal into the future, then retrieving it from the past. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling. But you started this before, and then you had to squeeze it in and check if
So
if the crazy Star Trek, the crazy Derek Koonskin fans approach you at the next convention or whatever and go like, "Well, Mr. Koonskin, you made a mistake because in the Quantum Garden you do this, but in the Polar novella you did that."
Yeah. Um, so 2 weeks ago, one of your audience members had asked, has your short fiction gone into your long fiction? And the answer then was I had taken 3 or 4 pieces of short fiction that had already been published, and I said, what happens if they're all in the same universe?
hmm
And so from Pollen from a Future Harvest, I took the Time Gates and I took the Sub-Saharan Union, and that was a major, obviously, element playing into Quantum Magician.
What is very cool for me, who I read the Quantum Magician and the Quantum Garden, is that the Pollen novella fills out a backstory about the sub-Saharan folks and the Venusians. Venusian, sorry, my pronunciation. Just cut me some slack here. English is not my first language. Jesus Christ, what is it again, Wayne? Chimera code, Chimera code. No,
Chimera code,
thank you.
according to the British. Yeah.
But yeah, Derek, the you're filling some stuff in, and it almost seemed to me that knowing that you had written this novella, you left it out of the quantum magician. I mean, this is a small, tiny little sort of how the sausage is made part. I don't want to dwell on it too long, but did you cut out stuff from the quantum magician because you knew it would be filled in the Pollen novella?
Sort of. I don't try and go out of my way to explain because I like to read books where I have to participate in the figuring out of what's going on. Like not in a bad way, but and so I always knew that the Pollen was already written and it had already been published as well in Asimov's in 2015, but it's been out of print for 6 years
Mm.
until Rebellion picked it up.
Mm.
So I knew they were complementary works, I knew ultimately they would all be published again in some way. So I just let them each do their own thing.
Let's do some reading. If you're just tuning in, this is the Rebellion Publishing special here. Solaris is their imprint, and Derek Kunskin, Premee Mohamed, and Wayne Santos are here. They all publish these little satellite books, and they have little excerpts of their novels in the back in there too, which is very cool. Premee, may I ask you to please stand up and walk forward, where magically a book stand will appear out of the ground with your book on
Ask.
it, these lifeless
Let's see.
things. And this is the fun part of the program. We
Yes,
are,
because I have lost myself. I'm like, where am I looking? Okay, here, hang on.
yeah. Let me vamp a little bit. Again, these lifeless things, two different timelines. A catastrophe has happened, presumably on Earth, possibly in the Ukraine. We don't know for sure. Here she is. Premee made it. Big round of applause. This is the fun part of the program. So, what are you reading for us? How do we need any setup?
Oh, maybe. So I am reading from. Oops, hang on. I just put my drink down on top of my mouse. That caused a disaster. Hang on. Sit tight.
That causes the arm to go the way of tentacles.
Oops.
Premee
That's
is
okay. I only
turning
need one
into an
arm.
old one.
Uh,
You can just hit escape and the arm will come back down.
sometimes these things happen. Uh, this is the start of the book. So as I mentioned, it's two narratives. So this will be starting with one person speaking and then the other person speaking. So unfortunately, it's clearer in text than it will be when I read it out. Although the audiobook had two different narrators, which I think is really cool.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
this is an inverse,
Yeah.
right? So like type, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So it's just me.
Wait a minute, but do we know what time this is?
Couple years in the future for the first one, and then 50 years after that for the second one. 50-ish years after that for the second one.
All right, Premee,
So,
take it
yeah, I
away.
guess I'll just read from the start, if that's okay.
Yes.
April 28th. Today we dug up bones in the botanical garden. I was briefly, reflexively confused. How did these get here? But what a question. People just die wherever they die. We stopped digging too, and we studied our findings. Brown, glistening, not white and dry like in the movies. For a moment, I thought my eyes had tricked me, and we had found a layer of mulch. Or wood. Sculpture carved by some macabre but competent art student. Bone fragments fell on the trays at my feet, the strawberry runners we scavenged from the wall yesterday. Just wanted something sweet. I haven't had anything sweet for a long time. He poked the skull with his boot and said, "Grass in cemeteries, they say, stays green even in drought because it drinks from the bodies of the dead." I said, "Who says that? That's disgusting." He laughed, and I put my hand on his warm back in the black shirt. Strong, there's still muscle along with the bone, and I thought, he could make love right here, in the sun, right under the gaze of God. Who in this dead city would stop us? But, well, we planted the strawberries and more beans and weeded the potatoes. The fussy, preciously laid out Mediterranean gardens, we scraped aside the white gravel, laying bare the black fabric below in another SOS sign. Very satisfying, that noise. "No one's coming," I said. "Still," said V. Soil rumbled and churned under our boots, not with the vigor of spring seedlings, nor worms, nor springtails, nor mice. Faceted, iridescent eyes watched us. A tiny tentacle lunged up and tugged impishly at my laces. V spun at once and killed it with a blow from the spade. "I thought the soil, at least, had been spared," he said. "I'll see who spares who if they touch my strawberries," I said. "A good day's work, no sentinels seen. Half the remaining trees have turned, but watched us rather than attacking. He scrambled back to safety just before sundown, sweaty and thirsty as always. He joyously locked the doors and pulled the shutters behind us. Dark now. Something scrabbling on the street below. Emerson. Botanical Gardens. The Botanical Gardens. Quick, where's that on the map? Split up, check the drone photos. Emerson? Look up, dazed. What? We're just breaking for lunch, if you want to come. Lower the book to my lap with trembling hands. Should be wearing gloves. No, wait. The scanner can filter out my fingerprints. That means I'll have to wait until I am. He stoops and taps my wrist briskly with her sharp, painted fingernail. Pain is bright and minute as a wasp sting and brings me back to myself, back to the cool gloom, the ceaseless breeze. The patch of sunlight I've been sitting in all morning has become shadow, violet and even scarlet around the edges from the dust in the air. You all right? I correct myself professionally, I think I may have found a primary source. Christ, are you sure? Oh, I don't know. Cradling the book, I realize, in both hands, close to my torso, as if I've picked up a small animal. There's no date. The book itself was published 50 years pre-setback. It talks about the Sentinels, about things in the dirt. I think that's a good place to stop.
Thank you, Premee. There was a little bit breaking up. I hope people heard it well in world. No, it was a wonderful reading. I just noticed that the sound there is a little noise gate in here that I have to adjust. I have to slap the audio engineer that is running these things. Premee, this is so awesome. And let me ask you, because I want to bring up a little excerpt here. What is very funny, the narrator is an anthropologist, and she gets in this mission, the narrator 50 years in the future, she is disrespected, or she feels not respected by her hard science colleagues. This is a little excerpt here where she says, she talks in her journal, I feel like I can trust Victor a little more, even though he too thinks I'm a romance writer with my head in the clouds. The soft science is my ass. I'm corroborating the actual history of this city, and that's what they call me. I don't know, maybe they're right. So this person, this protagonist, actually finds the journal that you were reading from right now, from 50 years back, where this invasion of these whatever we don't know what they are, these other ones, the capitalized they, and when they come into this destroyed city to find out what happened, she actually finds this journal, and the other scientists, the data folks and the botanists, they are kind of disrespecting her. Where does this come from, Premee? I'm psychoanalyzing you right now. You come from
Maybe
you have a
accurately.
hard science background, though.
Yeah, I do have a hard science background, but this is stuff that I hear constantly as a writer. I actually didn't hear it so much during my degree, but as a writer, there seems to be this false dichotomy between people who are seen to be writing soft science fiction, or i.e., science part of it is thought to be soft, and hard science fiction, so where the science part of it is thought to be hard. And to me, that's not a useful distinction, and it's not a helpful distinction to people looking for sci-fi either, I don't think. Because what's the point of dividing up science as a whole into quote hard and quote soft and assigning these bigotries and these stigmas to them? So because I kept hearing that, I felt like I had to throw something in there, that there's this anthropologist who's made the most important discovery probably on this trip.
Absolutely.
And she's with these hard scientists who are kind of like, oh, that's nice, sweetie. Ugh, I thought I had to say something.
No, this is really awesome. And now that you're saying it, that this also had to do with hard versus quote unquote soft science fiction writing. Now I understand that parallel too. Yeah, and there's even, I mean, if you go deeper into that, then ethnographers are disrespected by psychologists, and vice versa, I guess, to some extent. Do the other folks on the panel want to ask Premee a question? What is the question that you are dying to ask her about this work? Okay. We lost the other people, but I have a question for you, Premee. How did you evolve your duology into a trilogy? Because when we last met, there was Beneath the Rising, and now this is turning into a trilogy.
I love telling this story. Yeah.
Is this like Back to the Future?
It is not. So it was a 2-book deal when the deal was originally made. So I wrote 2 books, and at the end of the second book, honestly, I tried to shut all the doors and pull up all the threads and tie them off, and clean the tables and put the chairs up on them and close all the doors. And then a couple of months before that book was supposed to come out, after all the editing was done and everything, after it had gone to press, I got an email from my editor saying, literally, so, what are we thinking of for titles for the 3rd book? And before I could reply, my agent emailed me back and said, am I having a stroke? Because neither of us remembered agreeing to a trilogy. Again, because it was a 2-book deal. So we hammered out the paperwork for that 3rd book shortly before the 2nd book came out, and I was just sitting there like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this because, the ending of the 2nd book is pretty final, without any spoilers here. It's as final as I thought I could make it, and now I have to figure out how to write a 3rd book from that, but they paid me money, so I did write it. So that'll be coming out next spring.
This is awesome. And Shyla, who was looking over your blog and other interviews, she also said that it was challenging for you to remember where were places where you could take a thread and sort of unspool it, I guess, and then lead somewhere else. And this reminded me, Ted Williams, the great writer, was on the show, and he has this, I don't know if you guys know his Austin art world, and he has actually a super fan in Germany, and he sometimes forgets who he killed off, and he told us that he would then just email that fan in Germany, said, hey, how about this guy, right? And then she says, no, he's dead, this character. And so she has sort of this list of like 150 characters. Absolutely amazing.
It's like a wiki.
Yeah, a living wiki, absolutely. Who wants to read next? Wayne?
Okay, I mean, I can go.
I don't know if you can. Well, let's see. Let's see what you got.
Let's see how this goes then. And
Can the magical book stand appear from down below? Oh, it already has. Unbelievable.
there we go. Okay.
I like how you went over the table, Wayne.
I was like, did you just jump the coffee table? How come I couldn't do that?
I'm not gonna let a little thing like home furnishing stop me today.
Engineering oversights.
Right click on Wayne and check out his profile. He was born in Second Life in something like 2005. He's a total veteran.
Old school. Yeah.
He's jumping. He was jumping over tables when we were still sort of playing Habbo Hotel or whatever.
I remember Torley before Torley became a Linden. So
you remember Torley before he remembers himself. Unbelievable. Wayne is reading from The Difficult Loves of Maria Makilling. What do we need to know in terms of setup?
In terms of setup, what you need to know is that Maria has just exorcised a Filipino dwarf demon out of her boyfriend. And everybody in the hospital room is now freaking out over this.
Her boyfriend is in the hospital. He was struck by a car, and
he was struck by a car.
Yeah, and she saw the dwarf on the actually driving the car, and the dwarf is still in there. And, what is the name of this dwarf? I forgot.
Duende.
Duende. They're really ugly. I researched that online. Of course, there's lots of art. Some are really ugly. Some are more sort of whimsical and funny. Should we envision this Duende really nasty looking or Disney-fied? in our
I think
mind.
it's something in between. I mean, he's just like a working Joe. He just wants to put in an honest day's work and collect his
Yeah,
pay. Go
yeah,
back and spend some time with his family, and now he's in a bad situation. So,
right, right. He's
so
just
okay, I'll just get started on
get
this
that
then.
paycheck. Yeah.
Okay. Sino ka ba? The Filipino nurse asked in a terrified whisper. This time, Maria blinked rapidly. Comprehension? Holy shit, I know what you just said. You just asked me who I am, right? Right? She nodded. Shit, I can understand Tagalog. How the hell did that happen? And can you tell me what the hell just happened here? The Filipino nurse asked, and Maria understood that too. No, no, you guys, you have to look after him, okay? Is he going to be all right? I mean, he's not dying anymore, right? That's good, right? Doctor, being a lot braver than Maria probably would be in this situation, tried to regain control. She broke away from the hugging nurses and approached Tate's bed, but stopped as she got to the unconscious duende, still sprawled on the ground. He was drooling. "Oh, right, the duende," Maria said. She sidled over, stuck her foot out, and pushed him to the side like she was clearing a path to the coffee table. "That's a duende?" the Filipino nurse asked in Tagalog. "They're real? Aren't they just supposed to be making trouble in houses?" "What are you two saying?" the doctor asked. "Is it safe?" It's safe," Maria said, gesturing towards Tate. "Make sure he's okay, please." "Well, just from his vitals, he's in a much better place than before whatever it was just happened," the doctor said, going over to him. "How come you can understand me now?" the nurse asked. Maria shrugged. "I'm remembering things. Past." "Must be some past," the nurse said. She looked at the other nurse, a skinny, pale, red-headed man that looked like he was going to hyperventilate himself into a coma. "I think I need to take care of this one. You really look like you do." Nurse nodded, with her head down at the ground where the duende lay. "What are you going to do about him?" What indeed? For a second, Maria debated whether she was prepared to take a life, whether, for that matter, killing the duende even counted, technically. It was a piece of folklore. It had no ID, was registered in no Canadian databases, was not a citizen of anywhere, so, in theory, she could kill it off without any legal consequences, or so she imagined. This thing had taken hold of some driver in a car and steered that car right towards Tate. Even as she'd pushed Tate out of the way, this little bastard had redirected the car to hit him, and then he'd gone inside Tate to try and finish the job. She really wasn't sure whether any of that deserved mercy. But she also wasn't sure whether she was just trying to find excuses. Only bad guys killed without remorse. Years of comic books, cartoons, anime, television, and Japanese RPGs had impressed on her that good people only killed in self-defense with remorse. But she really wanted to kill this little shit and not feel bad about it afterward, which was ringing some distant ethical alarm bells. "Fine," she said, and she wasn't sure whether she was saying that to the people in the room or her own conscience. "You guys have security or something in this hospital, right?" "I don't think we have anything to secure that," the doctor said. "Maybe the cops do," Maria said. "Not sure I'd bet on it," the Filipino nurse said. Maria rolled her eyes. "Fine," she said again. "I have something I need to do, but you guys are taking care of Tate, and if this will motivate you to give it your best shot, I'll do what I can." She bent down, took a closer look at the duende, who was, she now noted, paying closer attention, wearing a Hawaiian shirt and jorts. She grabbed him by the collar of his shirt, winced slightly at the boozy smell from his breath, and slapped him a couple of times, saying as sweetly as she could manage, "Hey, fuckface, it's your wake-up call." Duende blinked a few times slowly and then widened his eyes as he finally took in the sight of Maria staring at him. He unleashed an ear-piercing screech that sounded like a cat being microwaved, and Maria cut him off with another slap. "I swear to God, this wasn't my idea," the duende said in Tagalog. "Oh, I already figured that part out," Maria said. "But you've upset these people and really ruined my day, so, what are we going to do about that?" Duende blinked slowly. You're, you're not going to kill me?" "That depends on what happens in the next 3 minutes," she said. "Are you going to give me a reason to?" Duende shook his head. "None of this happened the way it was supposed to." "I think that's rough. You should hear how my day's been going," Maria said. "Now, you know who I am, right?" He nodded. "Do you?" "I have an inkling," she said. He closed his eyes, head tilting back as he went limp in her grip. "Yeah, none of this went down the way they said." At the use of the word "they," a flash of anger shot through Maria like a sharp, quick blow to the back of the head. "So, I've got a deal for you, And if you take it, you walk away from here with whatever this is that you call a life intact. Do we consider you alive, or do we think of you as some Jungian archetype made manifest? She leaned in. I mean, if you're alive, it'll really hurt to get emasculated. But are you really alive? Maria caught herself in mid-flinch as the duende whimpered and wettish jorts. I'm going to take that as a yes. And I guess we'll end it there.
Fantastic, Wayne. We should have said that Maria is slowly learning that she is more than she thought she was.
That's right. Yeah. I mean,
Right?
she started out as a environmental artist at a big video game studio, and now finds out that she's a mountain goddess.
With her boss having some romantic interest that are
Yeah.
quite obnoxious. And she finds out that she's a mountain goddess, and she finds this out slowly. And here in this scene, this is brilliant, because in the beginning she doesn't understand the Philippine language. She cannot communicate with the nurse, and then over time she starts to understand it. The slide here in the back has Maria Makiling. This is from Wikipedia. This is some sort of sculpture. I don't know where that actually is. And then there's some other Filipino mythical creatures. I mean, as I was looking at this stuff, you guys have an amazing breadth of creatures. Now this horse person is also very
The
cool.
Tikbalang, yeah.
So what's his name? Teak Balang?
Yeah, but his nickname is Teak, because that's just shorter to say for Maria. But yeah, the full name for that is the Tikbalang, which is a horse demon where it's got a horse head, but then it's got like human arms and chest, but then it's got horse legs. So it's kind of like a weird centaur mutation, I guess, is the best way to describe it to listeners.
We actually have also a Teak Balang in the audience. Our Second Life Book Club AI is dressed up as a Teak Balang, and he's sitting there in the audience.
Oh wow! Okay, that is cool.
And then there's also the Aswang. I don't know. The Aswang is not in the book, but I've just thought the Aswang was really super creepy. The
Aswang is a pretty broad concept. I mean, generally speaking, a lot of creatures would fall under the Aswang category because it kind of just broadly means like, a demon or monster. But then there are specific Aswangs with specific characteristics like, vampirism and stuff like that, or something close to vampirism. It really all depends. I mean, Filipino folklore just goes all over the place. It's really far-ranging.
Did you grow up with this from your family? Were you told these stories? Was that part of the family tradition, or did you have to dive into this when you were older, researching this book out of your own interest? Because what's interesting also, I mean, Maria in the book is a little removed from her heritage. It's not really like in a good or bad way. It's just is what it is, and then she's sort of forced to be sort of reintroduced through all that, and then of course she's sent over to the Philippines, and she feels at home.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a little bit of both. Like, my parents and relatives would tell us stories about the monsters in the Philippines, but um, that was really only a general understanding. It was the usual, cautionary tale stuff about, you want to behave this way or make sure that you eat your
I
vegetables or
see.
go to bed on time. Otherwise, the
Otherwise,
tikbalang or the aswang is going to get you. Yeah, but then later on, eventually, when I wanted to do more about it, I mean, they couldn't tell me much more other than the generic cautionary stuff. So I did have to go off and research in much greater depth, like, things like, predatory habits for the monsters and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I kind of just grew up with them being monsters that were going to get you if you didn't behave yourself.
Right, and they were sort of then decontextualized from the larger background. Here's an excerpt that we pulled. Shyla, our researcher, pulled this excerpt. I'm going to read it real quick. Maria talks about Tate. Tate is her love interest, and she says, for Tate, the islands meant something else, and the language was alive to him. Slightly abbreviated. It was a heritage that he had been separated from, living in Canada, not one that he'd escaped. Maria wondered now if avoiding her cultural background had really been such a great idea. It seemed kind of silly here in Canada, especially growing up in Grande Prairie, in one of the widest provinces in the country to cling to Filipino-ness. So it's kind of, I guess, implied that in order to, hang with the crowd, she had to kind of downplay this. I
Yeah.
don't know if I asked you this last time. Is this paralleling your own experience, or?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up in Grand Prairie. I grew up in Edmonton, where Premee is still living now. But yeah, for me, it's like going to being a Filipino school kid in the 80s. It was, one of those things where like initially growing up at home, I spoke my English with a Filipino accent, just like
Mhm.
my parents did. But by the time I was in school, I learned very quickly on that as a survival tactic, I had to ditch that accent and learn to speak the way everybody else did as quickly as possible. So it's one of those things where it's like, later on you sort of understand what was happening and was like, oh, that wasn't such a great idea. But
Mm,
at the time, as a kid who just wants to be left alone and like, not have negative attention drawn to yourself, it is a survival mechanism. It's like you
yeah.
blend in, you do what you can to not draw negative attention to yourself, and that means trying to be as white as possible, within
Yeah.
physical limitations. So
This is so interesting. When I came to America, I tried to get rid of my accent, and then 3 years in America, I realized that if I dial back in the German accent a little bit, I actually have an advantage because Germans are associated, with hard work, and then some people find the accent cute. That's a
yeah.
different thing.
Yeah, whereas with Filipinos within Canada, it's like the reputation is generally it's like, oh, you're probably going to end up being a nurse then or something, aren't you? And it's
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not going to end up being a nurse, but it's like, thank you for playing.
No, I mean you play in this also these kind of cultural stereotypes.
Yeah.
They are well integrated in your novella here. You play with those. It's awesome. Um, we are approaching the top of the hour, but as we've done in the past, and that is with the blessing of our Linden Lab overlords, we can roll in the post game show into the mainstream. So the folks that are listening and watching on the stream, they can stay with us for the entirety of the show. And let me also just say that we're also streaming on LinkedIn, which is just an amazing website with incredible features. You can post your resume, and I don't know what else you can do there. It might be the metaverse. Also, LinkedIn streams have to be professional. That's in the terms of service. There's 5 things that you have to adhere to. One is make sure that the stream is professional. We already are, I think, flagged because the F word was dropped once and the S word was dropped twice. So that's great. I'm all for it. This might be the first and the last LinkedIn stream. Derek, it's you are up next for getting a little taste of the novella. Please, if I may ask you to get up. Ruby says, no, Ruby, I'm just joking about LinkedIn. I had to dig a little dig in it.
I'm trying to stand up. I'm not
You
sure
are
it's
up.
working. Hang on.
Oh,
You
you're
are.
up.
Oh, I'm
You're
up.
up.
I don't see it.
Hit the escape key. You're up and running, and you just have to turn around and walk towards the book stand.
I think it's just taking his computer a while to update. He might still be on like high settings, which if that's
Ah,
the
Okay.
case, then yeah, it will take him a while to see what's going on.
Last
he's
time it wasn't like this, but to my screen, I still see that I'm sitting.
hit escape and try to use the forward key. And in the meantime, I will vamp a little bit and set up a question that I actually have for Derek that I wanted to ask last
Oh,
time.
I thought you were
Actually,
going to
Derek,
say, I'm going to teleport you.
I could do that. Let me try that. Why not?
You're like a genie.
I'm walking forward. And now this is live, folks. Here, Derek is turning around, but I will now. Let's see here. How do I do this here?
The
Here
way
he's walking
he's
forward.
cruising.
He's Derek is cruising. I could read his excerpt. I think he might have
No,
crashed.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah. You're walking all the way back there. I just teleported you back. I
Okay.
just teleported you back here. And I'm gonna set up this question for later for our audience members who weren't here 2 weeks ago when Derek was here for the entire show. Um, I wanted to jump in when Derek said was talking about human beings and their brain and what they do in life as software versus hardware. And in the back of my mind, I wanted to jump in and ask Derek, do you really see human beings as just in those terms as software and hardware, and where does the consciousness come in? So that's for after. Derek just
Okay.
teleported with us. Here he is.
Am I where I'm supposed to be now?
You're standing with the back to the audience, but that's what Miles Davis used to do, so maybe that's a good sign.
It's
Uh,
so you can't see how I touch the keyboard.
Yeah, you're also an award winner. I mean, a little bit of eccentricity is absolutely
He can
fine.
do whatever he wants. It's understood.
Absolutely. Canadian
Well-
and award winning. No, stand like you are. I'm bringing the book stand to you.
I
Here
do
we
like
go.
how the book stand is kind of like moving around. It's like being in Beauty and the Beast castle. Here it comes.
I'm
It's got
sorry
its own
everybody
song.
for being so inept at this.
Premee,
Premee,
listen. The book
too.
stand has watched this movie 20 times in a row.
We can't hear it, but the book stand is singing right now. So
Hey, that's good.
The book stand is muted on the Discord.
exactly.
Well, while I'm standing with my back to the audience rudely, would you like me to do my reading?
Yes, absolutely. Please stand right where you are. The book stand has moved like the broom.
Well, thank you everybody for accommodating me. This is from the beginning of Pollen from a Future Harvest, and I'm just going to read the first couple of pages. Major Conco.
Do we need to know anything?
I don't think so,
Little bit
because
of-
this is the start of the book.
Mhm.
So I guess I could say they're on a planetoid. That's all you need to know, and they're a human base on this planetoid.
Mhm. Okay.
So good to go?
Yes.
Okay. Major Okonkwo had never attended a meeting of the general staff. The military police in the base headquarters checked her ID, scanned her retina, and shut off her recording augments. She was still getting used to the planetoid's weak gravity and bounced a bit as she slowly paced the ice-floored reception room. Okonkwo stopped every few moments to consider the steel coat of arms of the 6th Expeditionary Force of the Sub-Saharan Union. It looked strange now that they'd removed their patron's fleur-de-lis from it. For the
Eric, I'm
absence-
sorry I have to interrupt you, but you turned your voice off. People cannot hear you.
Oh, I did?
You have to click the voice button. Yes. Yeah. And in the YouTube chat, we have International Space Bacon says you are the Miles Davis of literature. So that's great.
So how do I turn my microphone on?
Hit the speak button on the bottom of the page.
Okay, I hit it now. Can people hear me now?
Let's see here. Is the button pressed down? You
Just
should
press down.
Okay.
I think so. Can people hear me? Can people hear me now?
I think the voice has been disconnected. So that was you're disconnected. Let the in-world audience, folks, if you don't mind, tune into the YouTube stream, and then we'll have Derek relog, and then he'll come back. So Derek, you can read. We have it on the recording.
Okay,
And
so
we'll
you want me to
relog
keep going
after.
or no?
Yes, please.
Okay. It looked strange now that they'd removed their patron's fleur-de-lis from it. It was too early for the absence to feel natural, but the danger of their rebellion felt very close. She could guess what this was about. Her senior husband was dead. In the last weeks, Okonkwo had sent message after message to military security asking for them to investigate his death as a murder. Perhaps they hadn't been ignoring her. Perhaps they'd been preparing a disciplinary meeting instead. She had little understanding of the politics of the general staff or how they would react to her requests. The ache of Garai's loss was like someone had ripped away a limb. The black inkiness of sadness mixed with the numbing of the world. She owed justice not only to him, but to the threat his murder represented to the mission. The wide doors opened, and Colonel Bantia signaled her in. Bantia was something of a familiar face, a woman she encountered in the officers' mess from time to time. Thumped. She stepped into the high chamber. At the seat at the foot of the long table, she saluted. Major General Nandoro, the commanding officer of the 6th Expeditionary Force, sat across from her. He was in his mid-50s, tall, his black hair gone almost prematurely white. Two lower-ranking brigadiers, Iakanjika and Takatafare, were at his left and right, and a trio of colonels she vaguely recognized. Okonkwo sat stiffly. This is Major Chenesai Okonkwo, acting head of auditing, Colonel Bantia said, emphasizing the acting in Okonkwo's title. Her French departed from the visceral Montreal dialect affected by the ambitious, leaning instead to the lilting French spoken by the Congolese. It was all artificial, though. Neither Bantia's nor Okonkwo's ancestors had ever spoken French. They'd adopted the tongue from their patrons a century ago as a condition of clienthood. Colonel Bantia pulled up her chair to the table in the middle of the colonels, and Nandoro gestured for her to continue. Bantia's dark eyes met Okonkwo's. Major, the Chief of Staff said, the General Staff requires you to audit the security and accountability protocols around the Expeditionary Force's research base. Okonkwo made no sound and perhaps no expression. The security and accountability protocols for the base, that was close to asking her to audit the entire base and by extension, the entire Expeditionary Force. That didn't make a lot of sense. Garai had never hinted anything about a force-wide audit. You, your teams, and your AIs will be granted white access, Bantia said. AI recordings of the investigations are to be sequestered during the audit and destroyed thereafter. White access, she thought, nearly the highest clearance possible. What's driving this, ma'am? Okonkwo asked. Has there been some kind of a breach? The two brigadiers looked uncomfortable. Major General Nandoro spoke with a voice both raspy and wet. The pollen streaming through the time gate has stopped. And I think that's where I'll stop too, Drax.
This is amazing, and I want to ask you about the pollen, but I would suggest, thank you, Derek, for reading, and folks were able to hear it on the YouTube stream. I suggest you relog, just quit out of Second Life, and then come back fresh, and you will be reconnected to voice so people can hear you. And then we'll do our little role play fun part while Derek is coming back. I guess Derek is not available as a teacher then. Am I right, Premee?
Guess so.
So this was Derek Kunsken reading from his novella, which we learned is in fact a little bit of a prequel, Pollen from a Future Harvest, and we'll ask him a little bit later about the pollens that send seeds to and fro time gates. It's a really crazy concept. Now, if I could please ask our secret prop department to bring up the special stage, and then Premee, please walk forward and sit on the student chair that will come up momentarily, because we're going back to writing school. Yeah. Now, Premee, there's a chair for you to sit. And Wayne, please assume the position of the teacher, just standing
for some
there.
reason, I thought she was going to be the teacher, but I guess we can make this one.
No, we'll swap it right after. We'll swap
Okay.
it. Yeah.
All right.
The initial plan was that the student has a choice of teachers, but substitute teacher Kunsken had I don't know where he went. I think he quit the job. So it's only you there, Wayne. I'm sorry. Now,
Okay.
I'm gonna say, action. And when I say action, Premee, you are in writing school, very exclusive writing school. You're the only student, and Wayne Santos is this incredibly accomplished writer, and you can ask him anything. It's almost like Reddit in 3D, if you will. And I'm going to say action, and then Premee's asking this question, and then Wayne says whatever comes to mind. I love putting people on the spot.
Yeah,
And then
just
I will
roll the dice on Sage Nuggets of Wisdom and hope that comes up. All right.
Well, Wayne,
I would like some wisdom. Yeah.
Wayne, times are hard. You might have to jump in to become a substitute teacher at one point. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
And lastly, before we get started, hold on, wait for my action. I will rudely say cut if Wayne rambles like I do. Okay.
Okay.
I will. If Wayne becomes a Draxtor type person, let me just actually stand right here to observe. Let me see. Do I have a camera? Can I film this? Give me 1 second. I think I might have a camera. Here we go. Let's put my camera on so I can film this for a little bit later. Okay, and Premee, action.
Hi, Wayne. Thank you for agreeing to teach me everything you know about writing.
Which is not a whole lot, so this probably shouldn't take very long, but go ahead.
Okay, I guess I will start with a specific question, which is, yeah, I've had a lot of comments about the ending of some of my stuff. So, in your opinion, what makes for a good ending of a long form work like a novel or a novella? And what do you find hard about endings?
Oh, so much of that, the answer to that question actually depends on what kind of story you're trying to tell, because I myself genuinely believe that there's nothing wrong with an ambiguous ending that leaves people with questions if that's consistent with the kind of story that you're trying to tell. But on the other hand, if you're telling a story that's for youngsters and they're, trying to get across a specific point, then yeah, you actually do want to tie up everything nicely in a bow, because kids at that age probably aren't really ready for, like, long rambling existential diatribes that leave them questioning their place in the universe. But it's like, once you're an adult, you're theoretically supposed to be able to handle it, so at that point it's like, more power to you. So I guess what the answer is going to be is, as
Cut. This is incredible ageism. We cannot sell this to the net. We cannot sell this to the networks. If you
Okay.
did, young people have. Oh my God! Substitute Principal Kunske just reappeared in a weird cloud in the middle of the classroom. Is he auditing this? No pun intended. His book is all about auditing. But no, continue a little bit. Yeah, this is fantastic.
Okay,
If
well, I
maybe
mean,
Premee wants a follow up or whatever. Yeah.
do you have a follow-up?
No, I was going to say that's fantastic, and I think the most important thing about that is, yeah, have an ending that's consistent with the rest of the story. Don't throw it in out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know that I myself am personally a little weird for that, because I'm not a plotter, I'm a pantser. So yeah, I do tend to tell the story as it goes along, which means that, sometimes once the story has told itself, that will mean that I've kind of got to go and look at my ending and go, oh, okay, so that's the kind of ending that I need for what this story ended up being, and I may have to go back and change that. But you
See, that's
probably
so
don't actually
interesting to me.
experience that.
See, that's so
Wow.
interesting to me because for me, when I'm writing the entire time, I'm writing towards the ending. So I always feel like I can't change the ending because the entire story is building up to that, and that's what I've been doing since the start.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends a lot on the particular writing style that you have. I mean, I know these days a lot of people aren't pantsers, so I'm, kind of a rare breed that way, but I've tried outlining and it really just does not work out very well for me. The words are just dead. So,
Legit.
now I do it the way I do it, and like, yeah, I'm kind of stuck with it that way. So,
So, Vice Principal Dr. Kunskin just showed up here. He's looking around, and we'll
Vice
bring him
principal.
in. And
I
yeah,
think there's something I have to say here, Drax.
yes,
I've come back from the land beyond death.
yes.
I think something happened with Premee's book, because I've come back here and it said you were on too high res, exactly what Professor Wayne said. And now I'm in low res, and everybody is a blobby white circle, and I feel like I'm seeing everybody's soul because I'm dead.
Yeah,
Well,
this is
This
really
is
like
so
Premee's book.
weird.
I mean,
you're
the
witnessing their true inner nature, and it's terrifying,
I
isn't it?
am, and you guys are all so bright.
I think the biggest question is, do you see the word they capitalized or not? If you
It's a bad
do,
sign.
yeah, it's a pretty bad sign. Uh, they and them capitalized, never good. No, those blobs are completely fine. I mean, this is how I see myself when I dream about my own future. But Derek, I think maybe your voice is off. Experiment with that. If you could walk a little bit forward out of the frame and just experiment with your voice, and we'll have you on in a few minutes. I would swap the situation with Wayne becoming student, and Premee becoming teacher. Here goes Vice Principal Kunskin.
I'm going the wrong way.
And Derek knows also that he has been promoted. I hope that he appreciates that. I think
I appreciate
his
a lot of things.
his voice has come back. Fantastic. Now just click the speak button in Second Life and stand on the sidelines. Premee, go to the teacher's position. Yes, almost there. Wonderful. This is community.
So do I need to click the speak button again?
Yes, this is community theater and public access rolled into one. Now,
Okay,
What-
I have clicked the speak button again, and it's changed color.
right. Hold on, Derek. We're gonna do the scene with Wayne, and then you'll come right in. People can hear Derek in world if he has pressed the speak button. Now, Premee, please face the student. And student Wayne, as soon as I say action.
Face the student.
Yes.
But
Face
how do
the
I
student.
turn myself around?
There are arrow keys, left and right arrow keys.
Sure.
This is funny. I see on the monitor that behind Premee is just another old one. He's observing her. Let's see how she pleads. Sorry, did I say bleed? I mean, I meant pleads.
Ah!
Okay, so Premee, ready? Just hit the left arrow key so until you see Wayne. Just look at him straight in the eye. Don't be afraid.
Nothing happens when I hit left.
Okay, hit escape and then left arrow key.
Escape.
Just turn around.
Oh, hi, Derek. I can see Derek.
There he is.
Okay, well, I guess I'll be one of those teachers that just kind of talks out of the side of my head there.
I guess so. Wayne and
Yep.
That's very
Derek,
annoying.
could you walk forward a little bit? You're blocking the scene.
Oh, sorry.
Walk forward a little bit. There you go. Now, Wayne, it's action time.
Okay, so all great and powerful, all-knowing, Premee, sage, writer, person type. Okay, so my question then is, how am I supposed to balance the themes of the story with the plot that is being told, the way you balanced things like the positions of power between your characters in Beneath the Rising, or covering the climate change ideas in Annual Migration of Clouds.
Cut.
God.
This is much too abstract.
Okay.
Student Wayne, student
Because
Santos.
I genuinely would like an answer to that, because it's like, themes are these big complicated things,
Yeah.
but you're telling this story with characters, saying and doing things in a comprehensible way. So, how do you balance those things off?
This is a
Oh, my
fantastic
God.
question, but try to rephrase the question in a more concrete way.
Okay.
Action.
All right. Okay, so how do you translate a big, complicated theme that you're trying to tell in your story into a meaningful way with characters interacting and doing stuff?
Wow, this is the hardest question that I think I've ever gotten in any interview. How could you?
I'm sorry. I genuinely wanted to know the answer, and I figured you'd be the person to answer because you seem so good at it. So it's like, how'd
You're
you do
asking
it?
the wrong question. Every time I get asked a question about theme, I freeze up. In fact, a couple of years ago, there was someone who called me and interviewed me on camera about this, and she was like, "So, tell me about what you think the theme of your novel is." And I just kind of froze up. 10 seconds later, she was like, "I think your camera froze," and I was like, "It did not." I don't know what themes are. I'm not writing to a theme. Normally, if anyone determines that there's a theme in any of my novels, it's when they're interviewing me and they tell me what the theme is, and I go, "Yeah, that sounds really cool, yeah. That's definitely it." But I'm not one of those people who starts off with the theme. I think it more comes out of the meaning. But if I had to guess, I'd say the theme is something like the position that each character is arguing for kind of the overall question of the book. So, some characters are going to be like, yes, friendship will save the day. And some of them are obviously going to be like, no, it's not friendship, it's science. And they don't know that they're arguing it. So I guess the answer to that is to have their dialogue and their actions and their interactions with each other argue for or against this question that they don't know that they're trying to argue for. If that makes any sense.
That actually does. So
Hey.
to kind of
Makes
sum
total
this up,
sense to me.
yeah. So to kind of sum this up, what you're actually saying is the characters and the actions are actually arguing aspects of the theme of the book.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you're saying,
Yeah, I
isn't
think
it?
so.
Yeah.
And I think
Wow, okay, that's
even the like supporting actors are in some way. They may be in like groups and stuff. So like maybe the oncoming army is saying something like, "Oh yeah, our argument for the theme of this book is that there is no hope, and we're going to smoosh you flat, and here are the reasons." Oh wow, there's some tentacles kind of coming into my.
Yeah, this is a student. I think
Hello.
he says, "I'm here for the knowledge." Yeah.
Oh yes. I would like to give you some knowledge as opposed to giving you my soul.
This was really good, and I'm very sorry. Cut. And I'm very impressed by student Wayne Santos for a middle school kid. He's a smart one. I mean, I'm judging by the chair and the desk here. Kind of
I
approximating
was
the
in
age.
I was in the advanced classes, obviously. So yeah.
Now, Vice Principal Derek is coming back, but he's going to play the student, and he has a choice of teachers now, Derek. Now, just click that little chair, just click it once, and you'll be seated. There you go. And who would you like to ask your question, Professor Mohamed or Professor Santos?
Let's go for Professor Santos for 200.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay.
Professor Santos, please resume.
And I'm in the hot seat again. Okay.
But you don't get a seat.
No,
That's
he's
true,
the teacher.
right?
I'm in the
Yep.
hot spot.
Okay.
Hot
Just
spot.
wanted to be clear because everybody's still a white bubble to me. So Wayne,
Yes, student
sometimes
Derek.
so when Drax was talking about door stoppers, that reminded me that I'm trying to write a 200,000 word epic fantasy, and I'm editing it now, and sometimes my scenes feel a bit flat. And I think it might be that there's not enough conflict in it. And I was wondering, how do you sustain conflict going through, like, let's say that middle 50% of the novel or of any story?
I guess I'm going to take a page from another school of thought, that school of thought being video game development, and say that one of the parallels that I've actually found that kind of works for me is having subquests, as they would call them in video games, where you've got like the main overarching goal of like, wanting to beat the bad guy, but of course there are like a whole bunch of intermediary steps that you've got to do before you can get to the final boss. Like you've got to get your magical armor, or you've got to get your magical sword, or all of those other things. And so as a result of that, that means that as long as you're giving yourself a bunch of different mini goals, whether that's like actual open armed conflict, or whether that's really more of a character or a psychological conflict, that are all working towards achieving those mini goals leading up to the confrontation with the final boss, you can still have conflict even in that tricky 50% of the book, because they're working towards something, even if it's not the ultimate final goal. It's a conflict that will eventually lead them to that final goal. So it's still relevant.
Wow.
Thank you so much for setting this up for me. This
is amazing.
Yeah, that'll be $1,500. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Linden dollars. Let me say,
Yeah.
I could pay you in Linden
sure.
dollars.
I'll take them in Lindens. Yeah, sure.
Lindens, and you can send them to as remittance to another virtual world or a game. Student Kunskin, I mean, this is a great question. Let's just do this. We have 9 minutes left. Let's ask, would you like to ask Premee a question as well? She seems qualified.
She totally is.
I mean, I don't know.
No. She gave me an award on Saturday, so she's certainly qualified. So Premee, sometimes I worry about where the beginning is. And when I was starting to be critiqued by other writers, a lot of the time they would say, oh, your story starts on page 3 or something. And it was very easy for a short story to kind of figure out where that was. But in a novel, because you can have some slow starts, sometimes it's harder. So how do you decide where your beginning starts?
Oh, that is a super good question, Student Kunskin. Because I've been thinking a lot about this recently, because you're right, it is much easier in a short story, and it's much harder in a novel because, frankly, we've all read novels that start off with, well, here's the story of my family, and here's my grandfather, and here's the country that he grew up in, and then he came to Canada, and really, so where I try to start it now is where something changes for the main character that kind of pulls them into the story, and where it becomes clear that this is where the story begins and it's not kind of a red herring. So I start off by usually trying to set up a little bit of here's what looks normal for this character so that we know for sure when there's the change. And I try to put it as close to the start of the change as I can. Because, yeah, I've gotten the comment historically before too from editors is, I think you're starting this a little too early. Can you move up the beginning?
This is
Feels-
incredible.
You should have done this earlier, Drax.
You should, well, you guys should do like a workshop here, and then charge a little bit of Linden's. It's a lot of you guys could make tons of dough. This is
As long as I
pretty
only have
good.
to stand in one place, I should be okay.
Yeah, I mean the only odd thing is that the Professor Mohamed is facing the wall and looking away from Dr. Coonskin here.
Right.
I'm asserting these.
Keep pressing the
Sometimes
button
we just
and
need a bit
nothing
of
happens.
personal space.
No, absolutely, especially with the great old ones lurking in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can get behind that.
Eye contact can be hard.
Yes.
As I demonstrated in The Quantum Magician.
Absolutely. No, I mean, on a serious note, this is actually an advantage of Second Life. Stranger Nightfire sitting in front of me, you guys talking about beginnings. I just want to, Stranger Nightfire, who comes here almost every week, he told me last week that the first sentence of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, I'm going to read it. I forgot it. I read
openings ever.
Absolutely, and I completely forgot about that. I read that a long time ago. My mother was a Marquez addict. The first sentence is, many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice.
And
So
we could do a whole conversation on that. I read 100 Years, I think 5 or 6 times in English, and now I'm listening to it in Spanish finally. And oh my God, he uses so many techniques that are so incredible, and I can't do it. But just, I would be here to talk about how great that book is someday. If you ever want to book club that.
I really do. I'm thinking about a book club of like sort of a desert island book type thing where writers come and they talk about their book, the one book they bring on the island and why, and give us a little background, and then I'll research it as well. My favorite book
wouldn't the conversation be a little short? It'd be like, what's your book for a desert island, and why did you pick 100 Years of Solitude?
You think that that's going to be a short conversation? That's going to be a 5-hour conversation.
No, but what I'm saying is I think everybody would, like, you'd have so many people picking that book.
I don't know. I mean, we have a very, very inclusive, diverse community. I've been pushing the 3-body problem, although my favorite book is not even Infinite Jest. It's actually The Pale King. I was just talking with Shyla about that before. David Foster Wallace. When Jonathan Lethem was here, we were only talking about David Foster Wallace. The first sentence of Infinite Jest is, by the way, I just looked it up, I am seated in an office surrounded by heads and bodies. Pretty good too. Yeah. No, I think we'll get a very diverse answer. Now, folks, I have to wrap it in 4 minutes, so I'm gonna say goodbye and big thank you. This was absolutely awesome. We got to do a 90-minute full stream format, I think, because this is just the nature of the flow. Derek, Premee, Wayne, it was absolute pleasure. If we can please get rid of the backdrop here, and you guys can stay standing or seated if you like. When the backdrop disappears, we can sit back on our chairs. Thank you so much. Thank you, wonderful audience. Usually I ask, what are you reading right now? But going with the theme, if you want to put this into the local chat, or if you want to put this as a comment on the book trailer on my YouTube channel. What is the book that you want to reread right now? I joke about this a lot. The book club is forcing me in a good way to read on schedule for the next guest. So there's a lot of books that I would love to reread right now, but I simply can't because of time constraints. The only available reading time is fully dedicated to the book club for me. But I'm asking you, the audience, also here on the stream, there's a lot of people on YouTube. What is the book that you would love to reread right now? Doesn't matter if you can or can't. Maybe there are time constraints. Put it into the local chat or put it on the book trailer. Shyla just put out the link, and Shyla also put out all the links to our guests and to Rebellion Publishing. Thank you guys. This was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to run through the credit slides. The Second Life Book Club is happening every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Second Life time, which is the same as Pacific time. SL Book Club at Draxtor.com is the email address. Next week we have a special show at 5 o'clock, but I'll mention that again a little bit later. The show is produced by Isabel Sharon, Shyla, and myself. Location manager, master builder is Ruby Geek. This set was slightly modified from when Wayne was here. And William Gibson was here too, Wayne, right? Like he was
I
sitting
do
there on his
remember William
typewriter.
Gibson just typing away on his typewriter. That was
Yeah,
amazing.
the typewriter is still here. I don't know where William went. I think he's not that interested in the old ones and that kind of stuff. But
He's probably
yeah.
just busy hacking the Facebook metaverse.
Don't get me started. Oh my God. God help us all. God help us all. Avatars are made by Ruby, research by Shyla. Special thanks, Marianne, Arduin, Theanine, AJ, Brett, and Patch from Linden Lab. All the moles at Linden Lab, of course. We have a lot of sponsors. Special sponsor today, Bespoke Caravan. These avatars are available at some event. I don't know where the event is, but you can go to the Bespoke Caravan marketplace. They have amazing avatars, including the horse avatar and the special avatar made for Alan Datlow that's coming up. There is a tip jar here on the side. If you have Linden dollars, put them in there, or give them to Derek so he can fund a special advice column. Give them to Premee. Give them to Professor Santos. He needs to send them home. You will find more information on the calendar, Discord, Flickr, on the sandwich boards. Do not forget, again, to tip our volunteer staff. This is not this is a threat. This is not a threat. A voluntary thing. But I see there's a lot of tips coming in. Next week, 5 o'clock, special show for the folks in the Southern Hemisphere. Cass Moriarty is on. Wonderful author from Australia. Really psyched about this. Cass has been coming to the book club in the audience every once in a while, and I'm absolutely excited about this. It's going to be 2 a.m. for the European crew to accommodate Cass, and we gladly get up because she's a phenomenal author. So please come to that show, and that will be next Wednesday right here in the Second Life Book Club. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks.